The day video games will run forever, man. Do you think it's Fortnite? I'm curious to see what they say did it.
Why have video games become so terrible in recent years? You know, games used to make me forget the real world existed. Hours would literally disappear. You'd look up at the time and realize you'd missed dinner and you didn't even care. As when I look back on those times, it all just felt so pure and simple. Like the developers had built something for you to just enjoy.
All right, so before we get further in this, I want to raise my desk. I want to watch this standing.
No strings attached once you purchased the game from the store and loaded it up. It was a ritual to stand outside waiting for the new game, going around the entire store browsing the physical copies. Gaming shops would be full of people, all just looking around wanting to play new things, or just testing out new games in store. This is why ownership and player control really was the DNA of the entire gaming industry. You could play Destiny with your friends every evening after waiting for the hype since Halo.
Dude, do you guys remember? I don't know if you guys do. I remember playing Destiny. Like when Destiny came out, I remember logging into Destiny just to play it with my friends and just enjoying every moment of it. I remember what he's saying though. I remember just playing games and just sitting down and just losing hours and it not feeling like I'm doing a job, as compared to now, where a lot of times when I play games, it feels like a job. And that's not because it is my job, it's because games feel like jobs.
Duty matches that didn't require a credit card to win. Even mobile games like Angry Birds only cost 99 cents with the intention that you'd own them forever. Gaming truly was a magical period a decade ago, but we only realized how amazing we had it when it was taken away from us.
True.
And just look at what's replaced it. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 has you fighting giant monsters and dodging massive machetes falling from the sky. Zombies everywhere, physics-breaking brain rot that looks—
Dude, we're not going to talk about, we are
It's okay.
not going to talk about Black Ops 7, right? Actually, I got an idea of what happened.
Guess who's coming home with daddy?
Games are designed to make money and not create a good experience. That is what happened.
like Fortnite.
What up, N7?
Because when you look back now, that idyllic golden era has just completely shattered. You get pummeled with microtransactions for things that should just be free. You simply can't compete or win without burning through cash, even though you've paid for the game. Sometimes the game promised won't even work if you don't get the next DLC. And then when the game does eventually dry up, you're left sitting on thousands of dollars worth of purchases that vanish into nothing. Zero value, zero transferability.
How many of you guys have spent a ton of money on a game thinking you were going to play it forever, and then all of your friends quit playing it, and then you got bored and stopped playing it, and then you look back and you're like, Jesus Christ, man, I spent like $800 in cosmetics and microtransactions on this game that I'm never going to play again. You guys have all done it, right? It's not just me and it's not just him, right? We've all done it. You're like, man, I'm going to play this game forever. I'm going to play this game forever.
Here's the bit that most people overlook. This isn't just about gaming getting worse. It's about something far more insidious that's spreading into every corner of our lives. It's getting clear that the studios that once built the worlds we loved helped pioneer a system that's now cannibalizing everything.
What is it?
From the products we buy to how we consume entertainment, to getting an entire generation of children addicted to gambling, and ultimately how corporations keep us hooked on things that make us miserable, all whilst robbing us of our money. Now at this point it almost just seems obvious that this is the way the gaming industry is, but it never would have seemed possible back in the golden era of gaming, which wasn't even that long ago.
No,
Rushing home from school, throwing your bag down, racing to turn on the console before anyone else would claim the TV. When you had no work, no to-do list grating at the back of your mind, all you wanted to do is just keep playing. Whether it be Fallout, Elder Scrolls, World of Warcraft, Knights of the Old Republic, Destiny, Mass Effect, The Witcher, the original Borderlands, GTA, Halo, Age of Empires, Call of Duty, it doesn't.
And dude, he's cooking though. There are tons of these games that I remember going back and playing, and this is where it's such a problem. There are a lot of these games, like I can go back and look at Skyrim. I probably have 1,000 hours in Skyrim, maybe more. I don't even know, on consoles and everything else. That game was not made to be played, and that was before like you had you had like all the modding and stuff. And you still played that much of them games. But now, man, you play a game, everybody gets bored and tired of it in like, you know, a week, and then they put it down and they just go off to the next one, man. And you just burn through games so fast, and games are just trying to extract as much money out of you in that little amount of time that you're there.
doesn't even matter. There were so many crazy good games, but all of them were similar in the fact that they gave you something the real world couldn't. A place where your decisions actually mattered, where you could socialize with people you wouldn't normally talk to. At school, you just felt like another kid in the crowd staying with the same friend group. But in a game, you had control and power, all while having lots of fun and socializing. It was genuinely escapism in its purest form.
Absolutely.
You could spend your Saturday completely alone, lost in these massive worlds, but
Asmongold's talked about this numerous times, and about like why games like World of Warcraft were very good in their prime, and where the turning point happened. And the turning point happened once money got injected into these games. So basically, like in the past, everybody that played a game was the same. Whether you were like the CEO of a big company or some nerdy kid sitting at home, you were only as good as the amount of time and effort you put into the game. And gaming was like the ultimate, basically it was like the ultimate neutralizer. Everybody was the same, and you were only as good as the amount of effort you put in. And that allowed people a level of escapism, and it allowed people a level of control in their life. Their whole life might suck, but in the video game, their life didn't suck. And that was what was important to them.
It didn't feel lonely. It just felt like an adventure. It felt wholesome, stimulating, but it was also social in a way that it isn't now. That's why Saturday mornings meant coordinating with friends hours in advance. Why pizza nights in someone's basement for Halo tournaments felt more important than anything else. Gaming didn't just entertain us, it built our social world. It gave us a sense of community in an age of loneliness. You'd play endlessly with friends and strangers who became friends, sometimes even meeting them in real life. Some of your deepest childhood friendships were forged in these digital environments. It was for me at least. But that's when you realize that something about those experiences felt fundamentally different.
No, it's true. Even social games are antisocial now. You are incentivized to play a social game by yourself. It is normally faster and easier for you to do it by yourself than to group up with other people. And even if you do have to group up with other people, it's dumbed down in a mind-numbing way that like your average retard with no thumbs can lick the window with both of their eyes closed and still clear the content because they're hard carried by their teammates, because the content is not hard enough to require you to actually need to work with somebody and be social.
Games used to respect our curiosity and intelligence, painstakingly crafted so every detail was exquisite and perfect. They required you to think strategically, to pay attention, to engage rather than mindlessly consume. That respect for the player, companies built their entire reputation on it. Take Bethesda's Morrowind in 2002, a vast detailed environment containing loads of cool creative architecture and some 200 books documenting the world's history. It's actually unbelievable how much work went into this. And all that hard work did pay off massively. Oblivion then arrived in 2006 and instantly topped it. Then it was Skyrim in 2011, which blew people's minds again, selling even more copies. It is still one of the best-selling games of all time, with a 96 Metacritic score and 227 gaming awards. These games were among the best for giving people total autonomy and control. You can go anywhere, do anything, ignore the main quest entirely and just wander into a cave, find a random book that tells you the history of some obscure guild from 300 years ago, or just
I'm actually afraid for Elder Scrolls 6. I'm actually really afraid for Elder Scrolls 6. So Morrowind did really well, and because Morrowind did well, Oblivion did good because Morrowind did well, right? If the previous game does good, then the next game is going to do better. And then Skyrim did well because Oblivion did well, right? So it would make sense that the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to do well because Skyrim did well. But if you look at the latest releases like Starfield and a bunch of other things that have came out from like Bethesda, it looks like they've basically been stuck in a moment of time and they haven't been able to iterate or do something better. And I think that while Skyrim did do very well, their studio has been having a lot of missteps lately, and those are going to kind of overshadow Elder Scrolls 6 when it does come out. And because they're taking so long to release Elder Scrolls 6, a lot of the people who played Morrowind are not going to have the time to game when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. So your original audience has aged out. And if you're trying to make a game based on nostalgia and use the same systems, but everybody's aged out of gaming, you're going to set yourself up to be like a giant flop. And that is my fear with Elder Scrolls 6. Yeah, unfortunately, Bethesda's hooked on live service games. Everybody is because they think that it's the way of the future, right? Like, everybody thinks that it means unlimited profits.
Find yourself immersed in a questline you had no idea existed. I'm sure we all know people who sunk hundreds of hours into Skyrim and still found new things. I used to be an adventurer like you became a meme that transcended gaming itself. Gamers like World of Warcraft became cultural icons, appearing on TV shows like South Park. Everyone relied on Warzone to stay connected with friends in 2022. And you've probably got something else to add to this endless list of amazing gaming experiences. It was practically endless. And you honestly realized that we had it so good before the course of gaming was steered onto a different path that no one wanted or asked for. Because somewhere along the way, games began to change in ways that didn't feel important at first. You might even remember when things started changing around 2014-2015, right when corporate money started flooding into gaming like never before.
Dude, when MTXs were about making money and they weren't about adding something good and high quality to the product, was the day that all this changed, right? Like when it came to like buying an expansion for World of Warcraft, that microtransaction, that transaction, that DLC was added to improve the product. But then eventually what happened is microtransactions were added and they were dumb stuff, right? So it would be a cosmetic or something. It literally added nothing to the game, but it let you spend money, and that right there was the crux of the problem. Because companies found out that they didn't have to sell you a better experience to get things out, to get money out of your wallet.
Big tech spotted an industry bigger than Hollywood and wanted exposure.
Oh,
with low interest rates and cheap capital, the culture surrounding tech changed too. Move fast and break things became the mantra, and the patient, methodical strategy that defined the golden era started to break apart. Then came a tidal wave of acquisitions. In 2014 alone, Microsoft bought Mojang, which created Minecraft, for $2.5 billion. Facebook then paid $2 billion for Oculus VR. Amazon grabbed Twitch for nearly $1 billion. And once that happened, the floodgates were open. And it never really stopped. Of course, the massive institutional investors like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street also quietly became large shareholders in major gaming companies. Unsurprisingly, BlackRock alone owned over 7% of Activision and held major stakes in EA.
Yeah, so when you have people whose sole goal is making more money, which is typically what's in business, but if most of the people that own the large stakes in this company don't care about the product and they only care about the bottom line and making more money, you're going to start making decisions that are not good for gamers. I kid you not, Genshin Impact is what ruined games. It's such a huge blow up and made it so fast that other gaming companies could not help but start adopting some of the gambling battle pass methods. I mean, battle passes were, like microtransactions were started by Skyrim with the horse, and battle passes were really popularized by Fortnite. So I mean, a lot of games have done it. It's just other games did it better. I think really what did it for Genshin was the gacha system. Like the gacha system and the gamba for characters is what made them so profitable.
Crucially, they started to control the voting rights that influenced corporate strategy. Big tech is one thing, BlackRock is another, but what about when entire governments get involved in gaming? Well, this is exactly what happened when EA changed hands at an insane $55 billion. The buyers? Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, Silver Lake Private Equity, and Jared Kushner's investment firm Affinity Partners. So the Saudi government now owns the company behind FIFA, Madden, Battlefield, and The Sims. I mean, EA's already hated enough, and it's already destroyed more cherished studios than any other publisher in history. And I mean systematically. Here's how it tends to play out. They acquire an innovative studio, force a live service pivot, meaning pivoting closed-loop games to something that evolves constantly with ongoing costs for players. Or just set unrealistic sales targets and squeeze the company for everything. Then they shut down when the creative team can't transform a game into a microtransaction factory. So let's start with the biggest names they obliterated.
I mean, that makes sense. That's their whole goal. They didn't just invest $2 billion in your studio to not turn $2 billion into $5 billion, right? That's the problem with selling. These companies were, successful on their own right. They were making plenty of money, but people wanted to make more and greed got in the way. Why make, $250,000 a year when you can just do a buyout and make $5 million up front? Okay, well now you do that, but now the company that bought you has to recoup all of this money. Plus they need to make levels of profit that is sustainable to their shareholders. And when they go to do that, it's just going to ruin these companies because these games weren't making those levels of profit to begin with. So the only way to make those levels of profit is to strip the studios down, run as lean as possible, and ratchet up different ways to produce income. And in doing that, you're going to kill what was the identity of the studio.
First, we have Westwood Studios, which created Command & Conquer and pioneered real-time strategy games.
I love
EA bought them
Command
in
& Conquer.
1998 for $122.5 million.
I love that game.
By March 2003, they were gone. One underperforming title and EA closed them down entirely. The co-founder said the shift from passion to profit took its toll.
Absolutely.
Then there's Bullfrog Productions, who invented the God game genre. We're talking Populous Theme Park and Theme Hospital and Dungeon Keeper. EA absorbed them in 1995, and by 2001, the studio was effectively dead, partly due to pressure from EA and partly because their own bosses succumbed to greed and money. EA eventually forced the team to make licensed Harry Potter games instead. Anthem by BioWare practically failed under EA too, leaving the sequel cancelled. Then we have the case of Visceral
That should have
Games
never
October
happened.
20...
Anthem should have never happened. That's what happens when you had something that could have been a great product and you decide to make like a fucking last minute change and overhaul the entire product. Anthem should have never happened.
2017, their Dead Space series defined survival horror and was profitable, but EA looked at those numbers and said that's not enough. They cancelled Visceral's ambitious single-player Star Wars game mid-development and shut down the entire studio, meaning 80 developers lost their jobs just like that. But why does this matter? Well, because EA decided single-player games obviously don't make enough money compared to live service games with endless microtransactions, which are a massive part of all of this greed and destruction of video games as a whole. EA brought the very worst form of this to gaming. It's a form of gambling, and they pushed it to kids. This is an outrage that should have been spoken about more by our politicians.
And the worst part is, all of these mega studios seem to think that these live service games are the only way to go forward. And then you have little pop-up indie titles that come out of nowhere. Games like Megabonk and a bunch of other games that just popped up basically out of nowhere. They sell 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 million units. And then they just move on. And there's so much that game companies could take away from this if they just decided to make better games instead of just trying to force every game to be the here forever gonna make $1 trillion game and keep shooting for the moon.
Kids are obviously the giant market for video games, and when you push microtransactions, loot boxes, and all of this digital form of gambling, you're really just training a habit in kids to gamble when they're older. Which is why they don't want you to just finish the story, be done, and move on, as you get real satisfaction from that when the credits roll on the campaign and now you're just off to multiplayer. Whereas live service games with endless microtransactions, those never end, and neither does the spending. Gaming was changing into something more predatory that ruins people's lives. There were a few early warning signs, like Bethesda's infamous horse armor, which cost $2.50 back in 2006. It sparked massive backlash, but it proved that people would pay for in-game equipment.
Oh, absolutely.
They later tried
Absolutely.
to monetize Skyrim's modding community and take a big cut of the profits.
That
The
didn't go
community
over
lost
well.
its mind, and within 72 hours, Valve pulled the entire thing down. The
Oh, yeah,
CEO
absolutely.
said pissing off the internet cost you $1 million in just a couple of days. Those early in-game monetization attempts are
Absolutely.
trivial compared to what came next. The industry had tested the possibility of monetizing games beyond the price you pay in the store, and they wouldn't let it go. Call of Duty introduced loot boxes with powerful weapons in Black Ops 3. Destiny took it even further when they locked base game players out of weekly content unless they bought
Remember that.
DLCs. Activision even filed a patent for systems designed to manipulate players into buying microtransactions through matchmaking, basically pitting new players against those deeper into the game to force them to upgrade their loadout in order to compete.
Is anybody surprised? Is anybody surprised with that? I have never been surprised with that. I truly feel like games have been doing shit like that for a long time. I think mobile games are the worst culprits. They let you play, they let you win, and then all of a sudden you just start losing non-stop. And the whole goal there is to get you to buy things. And then they'll let you lose for just a while, and then they'll give you a win to keep you back on the hook. Gotchas are the worst of the worst. Yeah. Dude, I feel this. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised on this at all.
Mobile game is an even more hellish environment for loot box mechanics and laid the groundwork with Candy Crush and Farmville. I mean, just take Angry Birds. When it launched in 2009, it cost 99 cents, a complete game that you owned forever. Yep. Because it was made with love and it was a fair transaction, it became a cultural phenomenon. But
Absolutely.
in 2015, they couldn't let that go. Angry Birds 2 then launched as free-to-play, but with aggressive monetization. Revenues soared 50% annually, and they ended up deleting the original entirely. When fans did petition to bring it back, Rovio re-released it for 99 cents again in 2022. It immediately became the second best-selling paid app. Then in 2013, they once again deleted it, admitting the paid version had an impact on our wider games portfolio, which in other words means people preferred the version without predatory monetization, and that was threatening their free-to-play profits.
What? No way. You mean giving people a good game that they could just buy and play was bad for your shitty game with a bunch of microtransactions? No. Wouldn't have guessed.
Genshin Impact generates an average of $1.6 billion in annual revenue and is another heinous example of loot box mechanics. The system comes with low drop rates for under 1% for top tier items, costing approximately $25 for 10 pulls, but there's a pity system that guarantees a 5-star after 90 pulls. This means potentially spending $900 on a single character for a single item, with the added pressure that you know you will get it eventually if you just spend more money. It's just a classic case of the sunk cost fallacy, where someone resists abandoning a strategy because they're invested deeply into it. It becomes so tempting to just do one more pull, but it was EA who...
Well, and then on top of that, the banner goes away. So if you've already spent X amount of money and you didn't get it, you might as well just keep doing it, right? Like if you've been saving up free pulls and you weren't able to get it with your free pulls, you might as well just toss on 20 or 30 or 50 bucks and just finish it out.
Who brought the very worst form of loot boxes to gaming and pushed it to children. FIFA Ultimate Team is a perfect example of this. It generated 29% of EA's entire revenue. And it works like this: you buy packs of virtual cards. You don't know what's in them, it's pure RNG, meaning it's using a random number generator, just like a slot machine. Then they used influencer marketing at a massive scale, advertising unrealistically impressive card pulls to get everyone hooked. And suddenly, if you didn't do this, you would always be at a massive disadvantage compared to others who spent more on this. That's why there's tons of stories of people losing thousands on these games. Kids buying hundreds of packs on credit cards that their parents can't afford. People have literally gone into rehab for this. Belgium and the Netherlands eventually declared EA's loot boxes illegal gambling. They threatened fines up to 800,000 euros and 5 years imprisonment, doubled if you're selling to minors. EA tried to fight this in court and lost, but practically everywhere else, it's just business as usual. When Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out with its brutal loot box system, EA finally felt compelled to defend their business practices on Reddit.
At the end of the day, you end up spending more money on cosmetics items than on a full price game? Absolutely. $500,000 spent on Diablo Immortal, yeah. Dude, the amount of money that people have spent on a bunch of this stuff is crazy. Wasted 2 years on and off on Genshin. It's so addictive until bam, it's just not fun anymore and you've already invested $500. It's typically the way it goes. With these types of games, you're on the treadmill, and while you're on the treadmill or the hamster wheel, you're having fun. But as soon as you get off of it and go play something else that is fun, that doesn't cost you as much money, you get off the hamster wheel and then you look back with regret and then you do it again.
Saying, quote, the intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. This became the most downvoted comment in Reddit history.
Dude, I don't mean to double pause here. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes by using your credit card, right? Like the first half of that and then the second half don't make sense when you put them together. Like there is no sense of pride and accomplishment for doing something if you just bought it. It's not the way that works, right?
673,000 downvotes. This is exactly what big tech, BlackRock, and the Saudi government want a piece of. Gaming had cracked something that social media platforms had been chasing for years.
That was
People
wild.
willingly paying money to stay hooked. Facebook could keep you scrolling, but monetizing that compulsion was tricky. Games just asked you for your credit card, and you practically handed it over. The other difference was scale and precision. Gaming companies knew that loot boxes worked. Tech companies knew why they worked and how to maximize their effectiveness to generate more value for shareholders.
Absolutely.
They had the testing infrastructure, the behavioral data, and the models that could predict exactly when someone was about to quit versus when they were one purchase away from staying. I do wonder though whether we might have actually accepted the rise of aggressive microtransactions to some extent if the games themselves kept improving and blowing our minds. But it's been the exact opposite. And this shows you what they stole from the gaming experience itself. That feeling of a shared memory with your friends is all just being ripped away by games that just suck time after time.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I think he's right. If games continued to just get better and every new game was just better and better and better, people wouldn't have a problem rewarding developers by paying an ever-increasing amount of money. But when games plateaued in like their ability to be like fun, entertaining, and interesting, and actually the quality of gaming has gone down, but the cost to game and the microtransactions have continued to become more and more pervasive, you're finding yourself in a situation where it is actually a problem, and I think more gamers are noticing it, especially with the rise of the indie scene. And a lot of these companies, like look at Ubisoft, they're finally being held accountable to some degree. And then with the rise of Eastern studios who are still being very heavily monetized, but are producing at least better quality games, you're starting to see Western studios fall on their face day after day.
Imagine something as beloved as Call of Duty, which had Hans Zimmer composing the music, and MLG memes completely taking over the discourse online. But in the same last 10 years, Leon, it's now one of the most hated franchises in history. The Infinite Warfare trailer that dropped in 2016 became the second most disliked video on YouTube with over 3.9 million dislikes. But at least you could pay for some weird camo. Then they held the Modern Warfare remaster, which is the game everyone actually wanted, behind expensive Infinite Warfare bundles. When Microsoft later bought ZeniMax, Bethesda's parent company, for $7.5 billion in cash, they had one chance to prove it could work. And to be fair, their first game, Starfield, got decent scores, but once people got stuck in, it just felt so empty.
Hold on, let me go back. Let me look at this.
They had one chance to prove it could work. And to be
All right, this right here is the score you need to look at, not this one. The Metacritic score, completely worthless, right? This is by reviewers and publishers, or like this is by reviewers and like games news media. This is what your average gamer thinks. This is not the number you want to see for a Bethesda title. You do not want to see a mixed or average score for a Bethesda title. This is not good. Bethesda titles were always 9s or above, right? I actually think most people did not like Starfield, and they didn't like the dated systems and how it played. The game wasn't bad, but it wasn't good.
To be fair, their first game, Starfield, got decent scores, but once people got stuck in, it just felt so empty. Thousands of planets to explore, but few of them had anything interesting on them. Then came mods, except this time they were called creations. We're talking an absolutely outrageous $7 for a 15-minute quest in a $70 game. Within 2 years, players dropped 97% to around 3,700 average players. For perspective, Skyrim still has some 20,000 daily players. Other new games don't even work when they're released. When the highly anticipated Fallout 76 dropped in November 2018, there were over 200 bugs identified at launch, leading to a 56GB day one patch. They'd advertised a $200 Power Armor edition with a West Tech canvas duffel bag, but what actually shipped was cheap nylon, and so everyone blew up about it. When people complained, their response was to offer a pathetic 500 atoms, roughly $5 worth of in-game currency as compared.
That was an absolute joke. I played 76 when it came out, and I liked the game even though it had a lot of bugs, but I remember this, and this was absolutely disgusting.
Compensation for a $200 purchase. It turned out they'd given actual canvas bags to influencers at a private event the month before, whereas regular customers, the ones dumb enough to pay $200, got the garbage. That didn't just feel like incompetence anymore. It was just pure contempt for those who'd loved the franchise the most. Sure, there have been a few anomalies in recent years, Red Dead Redemption, Elden Ring, Battlefield 3, but you get a game like that every few years, whereas
no, 76 had problems, but it was like every other game. 76 was a game with a lot of promise. But the problem was it was released on like hopes and dreams, and you just needed years and tons of fucking copium to get the game to where it was actually in a good state. And then the worst part about 76 for me was I played 76 on console and I bought things on console, but because I want to play it on Steam, I could not get any of my purchases off of my console. At least at the time I couldn't. I haven't checked recently, but I could not merge my accounts and get all my power armor, like all my power armor skins, like all the skins and all the stuff that I bought, or my account off of console. And at that point I was like, I'm not doing this again. I'm fucking just not going to do it.
It used to be a few every single year, and even these rare exceptions are constantly pushed back or cancelled. Speaking of which, you've probably heard that GTA 6 is once again delayed. It's a game that's expected to cost an unprecedented $2 billion to make, more than any game in history. And for some perspective, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the literal tallest building in the world, cost more like $1.5 billion and was completed in just 6 years. Since it was announced, we've seen 12 Call of Duty games and 8 Assassin's Creed games released in that same time frame. And yet, the GTA franchise will always be better remembered. People don't care if it's going to cost a bunch or when it's even going to be released, because Rockstar is seemingly one of the only AAA studios that still builds the magical game experiences that we had in the golden era.
We hope. $2 billion for GTA 6 puts a lot of pressure on Rockstar and everybody else who's involved with that to not let the game flop and to ensure that it is monetized out the ass, because you have to recover that money. And you are going to do everything you can to recover it. And if for whatever reason GTA 6 is not GTA 5 but better, the game will fail. If it has like social messaging, if you can't just do whatever you want, if you can't be a degen, if you can't fuck around, if you can't do everything that you want to do in a game, this game is going to fail. I think that a lot of people will buy it, but I think that if people perceive the game as a watered down, woke version of GTA 5, it's not going to go well. And I think that the early clips, the early Twitch streams, the early YouTube videos, everything that's shared about the game, if it looks like it has been neutered or had the balls cut off of it, the game is going to fail. And once the game starts to fail, I don't know what Rockstar will do to try to get their money back.
But this super slow, expensive development model is just so incredibly risky, because making a profit from this kind of game will just become harder and harder without charging through the roof. There's so much riding on it, it's literally a once-in-a-generation event, and probably the only game that can save gaming right now. How crazy is that? A game people are genuinely excited for that might happen once every decade or so if we're even lucky. But behind the scenes, while gaming profits are higher than ever because of all...
But what happens if it fails? Just keep that in mind. Like, I think a lot of people are putting a lot of hope and faith in GTA 6. What happens if it fails?
These horrendous in-game transactions sucking money out of players,
a lot of people do
the
that,
working
Leon.
conditions have also become terrible too. We saw this clearly when the gaming publication Kotaku investigated behind the scenes at that car crash Fallout 76 release, where they found evidence of QA testers working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, with low pay being offered pizza and a $200 bonus to give up their weekends. Some testers had their bathroom breaks timed. One said they'd fantasized about breaking a bone on the stairs so they'd be too injured to come to work. Think about that. That's the kind of thing that happens in a labor camp in China.
That's the kind of thing that happens to like whiny, entitled people who think that their job playing games is as bad as working in a labor camp in China. If you're thinking about breaking your fucking leg to get one day off of work from your like testing job, then you probably need a different fucking job, right? And you could be like, they were working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 2 months. Dude, I came from a factory. I worked in a factory where we worked 7 days a week, 60 to 70 hours a week. And it was mandatory. If you didn't do it, you didn't have a job. And it was that way for years. So, like, a 2-month crunch session sucks, but you're not doing some crazy physically demanding job you're gaming. And trust me, I know how exhausting gaming can be every day. I do it all the time. This is people who have like a level of entitlement that just want a bitch and they want to point fingers at other people.
And the gaming industry has laid off something like 45,000 workers since 2022. When Microsoft bought Activision for nearly $69 billion, they immediately cut thousands of people. Unity, Sony, the same story.
Yep.
And a lot of these people were the OG developers of the greatest games.
Yep, and you cut them because they were expensive and you were trying to recoup the money that you just invested.
The actual artists with the creativity behind the games that made our childhoods. Then one day they're just laid off in a Zoom call by these giant faceless companies.
Sure.
Or just finding out from social media before HR even tells them. And so you can see how anything remotely human has been hollowed out of the industry in the name of efficiency.
I've done it.
So they don't respect the studios, they don't respect the developers. And you know what else they don't respect? The actual stories and worlds that made these franchises valuable in the first place.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just look at what Netflix did to The Witcher.
Absolutely.
According to a former writer on the show, some of the writers actively disliked the books and games, and would even mock the source material in the writer's room. They hired people who didn't just not care about the thing they were adapting, they actively made fun of it. Henry Cavill, who was a massive fan of the books and games, spent
I mean, we all know, and I'm not going to say this is an exact situation where this has happened, but we all know that DEI hires have forced companies to hire people to fill quotas and not to hire people who actually care about the material, the subject material, and what they're working on. And I'm sure that there was a good level of that. Why would you hire somebody to work on the Witcher series that doesn't like The Witcher? Why would you do it? The only reason you would do it is if you were trying to check a box. Because why would you hire somebody to do a job that doesn't want to do the job?
3 seasons fighting the showrunner to stay faithful to the source material. It got so bad they had to leave after season 3, and then the viewership collapsed with it. The prequel, Blood Origin, got an outrageously bad 13% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So far this all looks like a classic tale of corporate corruption and greed, but there's honestly a darker edge to this all. I mean, you've got to wonder, are people actually having fun when they even play these games these days? There's a crucial difference between fun and compulsion. Fun is intrinsic. It arises from genuine engagement with the game world.
Absolutely.
From solving challenging puzzles, from collaborating with friends, making memories, socializing, and feeling really immersed in a different world.
Absolutely.
Compulsion is extrinsic, driven by the promise of external rewards, by fear of missing out, by the nagging feeling that you need to keep playing even when you're not enjoying it. Rewiring your brain with addictive gambling mechanisms. Scan Reddit and YouTube comments, and you'll find tons of posts just saying the same thing. I just don't enjoy playing games anymore. 63% of people don't even buy games now, an all-time low. And players no longer care about so many of the things that made those early games from the golden era just so magical.
And I think that it's interesting because a lot of times when people talk about gamers not buying games, right? Most of the time the conversation is around people don't have money. So people don't have money, so they're buying less games. But I actually think Moon here brings up a good point. And it's that people just aren't buying games as much because games just aren't fun. And if they're not having fun, then they're not actually going to buy more games. So I think this is actually a really good and really interesting take on this. And I think there's a lot of truth in what Moon's saying here.
Most gamers today care less about strategic thinking and planning when playing games than the average gamer did back in June 2015. The reality is, hard isn't profitable anymore. Hard games might get a cult following, but they'll never be as profitable as easy accessible brainrot games like Fortnite, or even just random stuff like Subway Surfers. So why are revenues still so high? Well, it all does really just come down to these random rewards and how addictive they are. But there's absolutely nothing random about how they're designed to extract profits from players. Back in the 1930s, a Harvard psychologist named B.F. Skinner built a box with a rat inside. The rat pressed a lever and got food, that's simple. But then Skinner made the rewards random. Press, you get nothing. Press, nothing again. Press, this time, you get the food. The rat went absolutely berserk, pressing thousands of times, never knowing when the next pellet would drop. Skinner said you could do this with any animal. He turned a pigeon into a pathological gambler in a demonstration. This is the mechanism behind every random loot box in every game you've ever played, because they draw on the same underlying psychology. Genshin generates an average of $1.6 billion in annual revenue, and is one of the most egregious examples of using addictive psychology for player profit extraction. Loot boxes come with low drop rates of under 1% for top tier items, costing approximately $25 for 10 pulls, but there's a pity system that guarantees a 5-star after 90 pulls. This means potentially spending $900 on a single character for a single item, with the added pressure that you know you will get it eventually if you spend more. Valve even, who were once the good guys, actually pioneered these exploitation techniques. Here's a stat that will truly shock you.
Okay.
By April 2019, over 71% of the most played Steam games featured loot boxes, with 86% containing cosmetic microtransactions. Valve earned nearly $1 billion from Counter-Strike loot boxes in 2023 alone. They claim they have no business relationship with gambling sites, and yet their entire system enables a massive grey market of skin gambling, in addition to cryptocurrency laundering. In late 2024, DayZ creator Dean Hall finally called them out directly on what we've been talking about in this video. Quote, "Valve does not get anywhere near enough criticism. I'm honestly disgusted with the gambling mechanics in video games at all. They have absolutely no place." Yanis, who worked as Valve's economist, said in 2024 that Valve helped create a hellscape, which he described as techno-feudalism, a system where corporations profit from digital platforms they fully control. Consumers live inside what he calls a digital fiefdom, where they don't own anything. They're forever paying some form of rent. Practically everything demands a subscription or a small ongoing cost, eroding our ability to own anything outright. And he's just right on so many levels. Levels that go beyond gaming and percolate into every inch of our digital society. You don't own your software anymore, it's all subscriptions. You don't own your music or movies, it's Spotify and Netflix, until they decide to pull content you paid for. You don't own your home, Blackstone bought them all and now you're a permanent renter. Even your job isn't stable anymore. Welcome to the gig economy where you own nothing, not even job security. You want to buy a car? You're going to start needing a subscription too. Once tech proved it worked, once they conditioned an entire generation to think you own nothing and be happy was normal, every other industry took notes. The gaming industry is a massive innovator of this model, making gaming companies compulsive and endless and boring.
Didn't they say, like, I can't remember where we saw it, statistics, was the gaming, let me ask Grok, that gaming makes more money than film. Let me see. So here we go. So here was the question I asked. Your question is the market larger than the film industry? It's a bit ambiguous. The market could refer to various things, blah, blah, blah. Assume it means like the global stock market, which is fair for it to assume that. If you mean something else, then you'll have to let them know. Key metrics, global film industry size, about 328 billion. And then let's see, broad estimates and narrow like cinema. So yes, the global stock market is vastly larger than the film industry by large. So basically I said gaming was larger. So then let's go down here. So then I asked, which industry makes more money and profit? There's like a lot here. There's a lot here. So the global stock market, no, not global stock market. Idiot. Not the global stock market. Which makes more money, film or gaming? Goddamn, Grok, man. It's like cooking. Global gaming revenue versus film revenue. Global gaming revenue significantly surpasses film revenue. The gaming market valued around 184 billion compared to the global box office 26 million. Yeah, basically the same thing. Gaming by 2 to 5 times, even on the broadest estimates. Yeah. So I mean, there's a reason for all of this, right?
You don't need to make people happy with creativity and immersive world building, you just need to make them unable to stop and rake it in from ongoing transactions. Why spend 5 years crafting the next Skyrim when you can spend 6 months building a live service game with a battle pass, daily challenges and FOMO mechanics that just keep people logging in every single day?
I mean, caught,
You probably noticed that highly anticipated games just fail so often these days, but the truth is they rarely matter to the executives making the decisions. Because when it does work, when you get a Fortnite, a Genshin Impact, and Apex Legends, the money is so obscene that it justifies every failure along the way. But there is another side to all of this that does offer a small glimmer of hope. In 2024,
That's crazy.
indie games made up nearly half of all Steam revenue. 5 of the top 10 highest grossing games on Steam were indie titles.
And I don't really think any of those have any real crazy microtransactions, right? Like, I mean, I think there's some stuff you can buy, like DLCs and stuff, but none of these are like real heavy microtransactions. I don't think Wukong had anything, right? They didn't have a battle pass or anything. I haven't played Enshrouded, I own it. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty telling, isn't it?
Tools like Unity and Unreal Engine made it possible for small teams to build games without massive budgets. Platforms like Steam let them reach players directly. When you're not answering to shareholders demanding massive growth every quarter, you can focus on making something genuinely great.
True.
But it's not exactly a fair fight.
God, 33
For every
was such a good
success story
game.
you hear about, there are thousands of developers who spent years making games almost nobody plays.
Absolutely.
And even the successful ones are competing against a huge money-making machine. AAA studios have marketing budgets bigger than entire indie development costs. They have
But the worst part is these marketing budgets do nothing if the game is bad. You can spend as much money as you want in the world, running advertisements, paying news media to say your game is good, paying streamers to play your game. But at the end of the day, consumers see all this and they can tell when something is actually good or bad. And that's why some of these indie titles with no marketing budget end up exploding. And most of that is because of word of mouth and good gameplay. So you are competing against this, but these numbers mean nothing if your game is terrible.
established franchises, brand recognition, and algorithms that favor them.
Exactly,
Small teams
Markov.
are making better games with a fraction of the resources, but the system is designed to crush them anyway. And I think the saddest part is how we've just accepted this as normal. An entire generation of gamers has grown up thinking this is what games are supposed to be. And yet they'll never know the feeling of buying a game, loading it up, and it's yours to enjoy without any intrusion or additional investment except maybe the occasional DLC that you genuinely look forward to. They'll never
Absolutely.
understand why you get that faraway look in your eyes when you talk about Halo 3 or the first time you played Skyrim.
They were so
What are we
good.
handing down to them? What world are we leaving behind? The industry makes more money than ever, but we've lost something that can't be measured in revenue.
I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like we are leaving something bad for the next generation. I feel like everybody is fucking up. And it's not just the legacy gamers or the gamers that have been here for a while. We know when shit is fucked up and we try to call it out. But at the end of the day, you can't beat the money. And it's just an uphill struggle. But it does seem like some things are starting to correct. And the more democratized game making gets with these indie studios, maybe there is a chance for an overcorrection, right? Maybe we can get it to swing back the other way.
Curiosity, adventure, discovery, and community. Whatever you used to feel, it's just fading away. People keep playing even though they're not content or happy like they once used to be. We had something special. We had worlds we could get lost in, stories that stayed with us, moments we
Absolutely.
still remember years later. Now you can see they just traded it all the way for microtransactions, endless gameplay seasons, and loot boxes, for something that makes us all measurably less happy while they get richer and richer, destroying video games in the process.
Man. I don't know, chat. I think that was a good video. I think that was a really good video. One of the main reasons I hate free-to-play games is because of microtransactions, and I view free-to-play games and mobile games to be the main driver of it. But because they're making so much money, it is impossible for other studios to sort of see those and not add them into every aspect of gaming. And I think that realistically, you shouldn't be adding microtransactions to the game if it's not bringing some level of something to your consumers. If it's not adding to the game and it's only adding to your bottom line, then it probably shouldn't be there. And I don't know what we're going to do or when it's going to correct, but hopefully it does. Because, man, I'm like you guys, and I am just tired of all these microtransaction-laden games that don't really offer anything and that I don't even really enjoy to play. I just, like he said, feel compulsed to play these games because there's nothing else out there.